she didn't believe in blind dates. Not really. As the CEO of a fast-growing tech company, Amelia Hayes was used to schedules, numbers, and carefully planned outcomes. Romance didn't fit neatly into her calendar. But when her best friend insisted that she needed a night away from the boardroom and secretly set her up with someone, Amelia reluctantly agreed. Still, as she walked into the quiet little restaurant on the corner of Willow Street, dressed in a tailored navy suit that screamed executive power, she had no idea her evening, and her life, was about to change forever. He was already there. Daniel Reed. A single father, dressed in a simple gray shirt and worn jeans. His hair wasn't perfectly styled, his shoes weren't polished like the men Amelia was used to meeting at charity galas or business luncheons. He looked ordinary. Too ordinary for a woman whose time was measured in millions of dollars and global deals. Amelia almost turned around before he noticed her. But when his eyes lit up with a kind smile and he stood to pull out her chair, something stopped her. From the very beginning, Amelia's mind was split between polite conversation and silent judgment. She couldn't understand why her friend thought this man was right for her. He was sweet, yes, and clearly devoted to his 6-year-old daughter. He talked about her with a quiet pride that softened his voice. But he wasn't ambitious, not in the way Amelia defined ambition. He worked as a mechanic at a local garage. He didn't own a company, didn't dine in 5-star restaurants, didn't vacation in Europe. She smiled when he spoke but couldn't stop the tiny voice in her head that whispered, "We don't belong in the same world." The date ended with polite goodbyes. Amelia climbed into her luxury car, exhaling relief. She told herself it was fine, just one evening wasted. Daniel, on the other hand, walked home with a quiet ache in his chest. He had felt her walls, her unspoken judgment. Still, he had no regrets. He had faced worse than rejection. After losing his wife years earlier in a tragic accident, raising his daughter alone had taught him resilience. If Amelia couldn't see his worth, that was her loss. Days passed. Amelia threw herself back into work, barely thinking of Daniel. But fate has a strange way of weaving threads together. A week later, Amelia found herself at an industry conference in a neighboring city. She delivered a speech that left the room buzzing, her confidence glowing. Yet that night, as she returned to her hotel, her carefully controlled world was shattered. In the dimly lit parking garage, 2 masked men emerged from the shadows. Before she could react, one grabbed her arm, demanding her purse and laptop bag. Panic surged through her veins. She had bodyguards during corporate events, but tonight she had dismissed them, insisting she needed no protection. Now, her pulse thundered as fear strangled her voice. "Let her go." The voice came from behind. Strong. Calm. Familiar. Amelia's head whipped around, and there he was. Daniel Reed. The man she had silently mocked just days before. He had been in the city to pick up car parts for his shop and had parked nearby. And now, without hesitation, he stepped between her and the attackers. What Amelia didn't know was that Daniel wasn't just a mechanic. Before his daughter was born, before tragedy struck his family, he had served as a Marine. Years of training, discipline, and battlefield experience surged back in an instant. In a blur of movement, he disarmed one attacker, twisting his wrist until the knife clattered to the ground. The second lunged, but Daniel met him with swift precision, knocking him flat. Within minutes, both men fled, stumbling into the night. Amelia stood frozen, heart pounding, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Daniel turned to her, his breathing steady, his eyes filled with concern rather than pride. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, his voice grounding her trembling fear. For the first time, Amelia didn't see him as ordinary. She saw him as extraordinary. In the days that followed, something shifted. Amelia couldn't stop thinking about Daniel, not the way he fought off danger, but the way he gently checked on her afterward, the way he offered no judgment for her earlier dismissal of him. He didn't boast about his skills, didn't remind her that he had saved her life. He simply returned to his world of oil-stained hands and bedtime stories for his daughter. Amelia reached out. First with a thank-you dinner, then with small excuses to see him again. Each time, the walls she had built around herself cracked a little more. She learned about his sacrifices, his late nights repairing cars just to pay for his daughter's school tuition, his quiet grief for the wife he lost, his refusal to let bitterness define him. In Daniel, she saw strength of character that no corporate title could match. But challenges still came. The media caught wind of their growing closeness, painting Daniel as unfit for a woman of Amelia's status. Some of her board members whispered about the CEO lowering her standards. Even Amelia's own insecurities resurfaced. Could she truly build a life with someone so different from her world? It was Daniel's daughter who gave her the answer. One afternoon, Amelia visited Daniel's modest home and found the little girl drawing pictures at the kitchen table. She had sketched Amelia holding hands with Daniel, with a big sun shining above them. When Amelia asked why, the girl said simply, "Because you make Daddy smile again." That night, Amelia realized love wasn't about matching resumes or bank accounts. It was about healing each other's wounds, about seeing the unseen value in someone's heart. And Daniel had already saved her once, not just from attackers in a garage, but from a life of cold ambition that left no room for warmth. Months later, Amelia stood on a stage at a company event, delivering her usual powerful speech. But at the end, she surprised everyone. "Success isn't measured by the balance of your portfolio," she said, her eyes seeking Daniel in the crowd. "It's measured by the people who stand with you in your darkest moments and remind you what it means to truly live." The audience applauded, but Amelia didn't care about the recognition. What mattered was the single dad in the back, holding his daughter's hand, smiling at her with pride. The man she once mocked had become the man she couldn't imagine her life without.